Good morning, everyone. It's nice to see such a great crowd here today, and I think judging from the interest we've had in this, it's a good thing you got here early to claim your seat. If I were you, I wouldn't give it up the rest of the day. Welcome to this year's Curtis B. Hurley Symposium presented by the Missouri School of Journalism, the National Press Club Journalism Institute, and the Reynolds Journalism Institute. I'm Barbara Cochran, as you can see from my name tag, which I'll now take off. I'm Barbara Cochran, the Curtis B. Hurley Chair in Public Affairs Journalism and Director of Missouri's Washington program, which brings students here for a semester to work and study in the nation's capital. Our students focus on the topic that we're discussing today, the role of courageous and independent journalism in our democracy. We're going to hear from journalists engaged in fact-checking, that all-important antidote to fake news. We'll get the views of two former White House officials, a Democrat and a Republican, on how the relationship between government and the press is supposed to work. We'll hear from White House reporters, Washington bureau chiefs, news executives, and media critics about what it's like to cover Washington in the Trump era. And finally, we'll take a break for lunch, and then we'll hear from the Dean of the Missouri School of Journalism and from a Missouri alum who covers the White House for CBS News. So a pretty full morning. Now I'd like to introduce some of my colleagues who have traveled here from Columbia and New York to be with us today. And I'll ask them to stand as I introduce them so you'll know who they are and you can say hello later on in the day. First, please welcome Dean David Kurpius. Dave is in his second year at the J School, and I'm so pleased that he was able to make the time in his very busy schedule to be with us today. In fact, he's flying back tonight to go to a faculty meeting, so I'm glad he took the time for this. And he'll speak to us at lunch about the future direction of our school. Next, I'd like to introduce Associate Dean Fritz Kropp. Fritz oversees our global studies programs, which include the Washington program, I guess because Washington is maybe considered a foreign country, I don't know. Next, Mike Jenner, who is the Houston Hart Chair in Journalism and editor of the Columbia Missourian. Next, Reuben Stern, who is the director of our New York program. Daryl Moen, who is Professor Emeritus and is here visiting with us. And finally, Mike McKean, who I'm going to introduce at greater length a little bit later. And from Washington, I know this is going to get a big round of applause, my colleague and Director Emeritus of the Washington program, Wes Pippert. And finally, another great colleague here in Washington, Sarah Spreitzer. She's way in the back because she has a cold and she's trying to keep a low profile. Sarah is the Director of Federal Relations for the University of Missouri System and a great colleague here. The students enrolled in the Washington program this semester are all here today. They're going to be covering this event as if it were a news story, and they're all primed and ready. I would like them to stand and be recognized. And also, I think we have one or two veterans of the Washington program who I'd like to invite to stand and be recognized. Thank you. And so for all you employers in the audience, I just want to say all of the current students will be graduating in May. They probably brought their resumes with them, and so they're all terrific, and don't miss a bit. You've heard me mention the name of Curtis B. Hurley several times, and you may wonder who that is and how this symposium came to bear his name. Curtis Hurley was an Arkansas newspaper editor and the boss of a promising young journalist named Ed McLaughlin, who came to Hurley for advice about how to get ahead. Hurley knew Walter Williams, the founder of the Missouri School of Journalism, and so he advised McLaughlin to enroll there and even gave him $400 to do so. This was 1927, when tuition was just a bit lower than it is now. McLaughlin went on to own a very successful publishing business. He and his wife decided to endow a chair at the journalism school and to name it not for himself, but for his mentor, Curtis Hurley. So we're gathered here today because of the example set by an enterprising country editor and the gratitude and generosity of his protege. And while I'm talking about gratitude, let me express my thanks to Julie Hsu and Crystal White of the National Press Club Journalism Institute, the hardworking staff of the National Press Club, and my colleagues at the Reynolds Journalism Institute for all of their help in producing today's symposium. This program is being recorded by the Broadcast Operations Center of the Press Club, and it's also being distributed on Facebook Live through the Reynolds Facebook page. So it will be there for live viewing. In fact, I'm told that my colleagues in Missouri have it on a big screen in a room now for people to drop by and see what's going on. And in the coming days, we'll post stories about the discussion, photos, and videos on the RJI website. We also encourage you to post about this symposium today on social media. The hashtag we're using, which you see on the screen, is Hurley 2017. So please tweet away, if you will.